In this short video, I'm going to show you how to make a very simple scatter plot using Microsoft Excel. Most spreadsheet programs will have this sort of functionality. This particular program is Microsoft version 2010. If you have an older or newer version, it may be a little bit different, but the basic idea remains the same. So the first thing I do is I start with my data set. Here I have date of pennies in column A and mass of those pennies in column B. And I'm going to first just select those two columns by holding down my left mouse button and dragging it over. So that selects both of those columns. I will now insert a scatter plot, and then I'm going to insert a scatter plot just with the markers. I'm not going to connect the dots or anything. And there I have it. And so here I have mass on the y and date on the x-axis. So the first thing I want to do is I want to move this to its own sheet. So I'm going to right-click here and select the option of move this chart. I'm going to have it in its own sheet, and I can give it a name or just call it chart 1 or chart 2, whatever. Okay, so now I have it in its own sheet. I also want to format the layout. Okay, and so I want to be able to label my two axes. And so here I'm going to go into my chart layouts, drop downs. I'm just going to select this simple one up here. For other applications where I want to select a trend line, for example, if I wanted to do a linear fit to my data, I might select this one. But again, for our purposes today, I just want a simple layout. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to zoom in on my data. I want to get rid of all of this empty space down here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the X, put my mouse over the Y-axis, excuse me, and I'm going to double click it. And that gives me my axis options. And what I can see is my data basically goes from, maybe 2.4 up to about 3.3 or something. And so I'm going to zoom in by, rather than having the auto axis function, I'm going to change my minimum to 2.2. Okay, and that gives me and when I close that, now I can see that my data is much better represented. So now I need to label my axes. So here I'm going to left click on this once, and then select all of the data here. I'm going to label this as mass and give it unit grams. Down here, I'm going to label my x-axis by selecting that, and this is date. Okay, and importantly, I am going to also give it a descriptive title. Now, you want the title to be descriptive enough that anyone looking at this chart will know just by reading the title what exactly is being shown in this chart. In this case, I don't really want legend here. Sometimes it is useful to have, but in this case, I'm going to delete it. Now, there are ways that you can change all of the symbols, but I'm just going to leave them as the generic for this point. But that's something you can play around with if you want. Now, in order to publish this, I simply need to copy and paste and put it into a Word document. So I'm going to right-click on anywhere on the chart and say copy. Then I'm going to change to a Word document that might be my lab report, and I'm simply going to paste. And there we have it. So it pastes directly into that Word document. I can save that as a file, and now I can upload that to my Turnitin site to turn in my report form as we're going to ask you to do. So that is a basic graph in Excel. Now the next thing I want to show you, coming back to that data, is how to do a few other useful things in Excel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the average, the standard deviation, and the coefficient of variation for this data set. Okay, I'm going to do it for all of the data, but as you'll see when you are doing this for a similar data set, I may just separate this out. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at the average and standard deviation of that data set. So to do this, we can insert a formula, but we can really type it in a simple way. So I'm going to hit the equal sign on my keyboard. Okay, and then I'm going to start typing AVE, and there's my average right there. I can click that and it'll be average. Okay, and I can hit the tab button now and it'll populate that. And then it's going to go from the first through the second. And so what I can do now that I'm in those parentheses is that I can go up to my data set and I can go from B2 all the way down to my last data set, which is B125. I now close my parentheses and hit enter. And there's my average value. Now I can do that by selecting the data, or I could simply manually type it in. So there is my average. Okay, and now I want the standard deviation for that data set. So to get the standard deviation, I hit the equal sign. Standard deviation is right here. Okay, STDEV is standard deviation. And again, I'm going to select the data set. I'm going to go from B2 all the way to B25. And again, I can have that input by directly selecting the data, or I can simply type it. I hit enter, and there is my standard deviation for that data set. And the coefficient of variance is simply a percentage of this standard deviation as compared to my average. So I'm going to hit equals, and I'm going to click this. I'm going to say divided by this. Actually, let me back up. I'm going to say 100 times. I'm going to use the asterisk for times. Then I'm going to hit that standard deviation divided by the average. Hit enter, and I see I have a 10.47% variation in my data. So that's some simple statistical tools that we will be using in different applications in this experiment, or throughout the laboratory course, excuse me. Okay, so there's Microsoft Excel Basics.